There we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to those of you joining us here in Vancouver and those of you on Facebook Live. My name is David Crawford. I'm the Vice President of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and thank you for joining us about this, what we call a community dialogue about an important topic, and inviting people to share their what I call authentic stories and lived experience with us. A bit of housekeeping for those of you that are here in Vancouver. If you could turn your phone to silence just so you don't disturb people around you. But obviously, would encourage you to participate in social media if you so choose. But we just obviously don't want phones ringing during our conversation today. And so, without further ado, I'd like to thank the BC Lung Association and specifically Christopher Lamb, the President and CEO, for joining us today and helping really to make this all possible. And so, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you for that. And it's really a pleasure for us to be here. I want to thank the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade for this opportunity, this platform, for what's a very important topic for us. As you can sort of see just up here, we have a fantastic group of people that ranges in all sorts of expertise. And what we really want to focus on today is experience. And that's with, we have a couple students that are up here that are going to talk about their experiences. We also have a parent up here, and a parent and a teacher. So what we want to do is we really want to hear from them. This is a really important part of us moving the needle forward in what we consider to be a crisis in our community, and that's the issue of vaping. A lot of you in this room know a lot about vaping, so I won't go into detail about the epidemic that's sweeping the province, but what we really should detail is how this is affecting the youth in our community. And the only way we're really going to be able to pinpoint and solve this issue is if we talk to them, we engage them, and really they need to be the drivers of change. So I want to thank our students that are going to be here, because you will be hopefully affecting some change for us and for yourselves moving forward. What I want to do, of course, is introduce them to you. So why don't we start with Insiyah. She's right in the middle. I believe you're 12. Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and who's here with you?
Okay, so my name is Insiyah Dharsee, and who's with me is my mom. And what I know about vaping is that it's here to stay, and I know that it's becoming an epidemic. And I'm requesting that a visual message to get the middle school as soon as possible to know about vaping, because most of my students don't know that vaping is really bad for you. So I want to get the message to them.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. And maybe we'll hear from your mother, Rubina.
Hi, my name is Rubina. I'm mom of Insiyah Dharsee. Basically, as a parent, I feel it's very important to get the message to your child at a very young age. I started talking to Insiyah about smoking. Vaping wasn't out at that time. Started telling her it's not good for you. We would bring it up casually when we are driving. I would slowly park the car and show her people smoking, and slowly from there I added information as we went by. So I started at a very young age talking to her, not much in detail, but a little bit adding as the years went by. And I think that planted a seed in her as to smoking is bad. I know some parents look at it as, I don't want to talk about smoking because I'll encourage them to smoke. That's not the case. It's better to start early. It's like telling your kid to put a helmet when they are going to go on their bike. It's something similar to that, but just casually start talking to them slowly, and then kind of building on it. Because once you start telling them in middle school and high school, they've already made up their minds what they want to do. So.
Absolutely, and such a valuable point there, especially from a parent's perspective, and Insiyah's point around needing this to be in middle schools, and us really targeting the right age group and how much younger it is. Brave Insiyah is here and she's 12, and she's worried about this. This is something that she cares about. This is something she's seeing her peers do. So that's really important. The next people I want to introduce, Marcus and Rania. I really want to hear their story simply because this is a very important story. This is a lived experience, and I'm hoping that they're willing to share that story with us right now.
Hi, my name is Rania Gialpa. I'm a high school student, and my experience is that I used to smoke cigarettes, and I thought vaping would be better, and it's actually worse than I thought it would be because, sorry, I'm stuck. I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah. Yeah, vaping affected me because, like with cigarettes, like I'll buy like it's $15 and it will be expensive for cigarettes. Like you'll like smoke like couple a day, like let's say 8, and then you'll see, oh, I have like 11 more. Like I'll just like save it up. And with vape, you have like you buy juice for like $20 and it lasts you for 2 weeks and you keep on hitting it like I would hit it like every like 2 minutes and it will give me this nice head rush and I'll be like, oh, it's very convenient. You don't have to go outside and do it. You don't like, yeah, like you can, oh, like I go to the washroom. Oh, teacher's gonna go to the washroom. Oh, I'll like go to the washroom and then like, just hit it. And there will be like my friends going, like smoking. Like there's a lot of like, I would say 80% of the school, they smoke vape. So from that, I just want to say that like, um,
What are you hoping to do?
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm so stuck, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm Marcus Van Bylandt. I met Rania just a week or two ago. I'm a teacher at Burn Creek Community School. I didn't meet Rania coming out of one of the washrooms where we often find 6 or 10 of our kids. It's kind of the new smoke pit. Our administrators would tell us that it's a rare occasion to walk into a washroom and not find a student vaping at this point. It's really what in my day was the smoke pit. You walk out in the rain, you're in the ravine. Some people smoke. Now it's every washroom in the building. It's all times of the day, as Rania was alluding to. The kids aren't happy that they're vaping, but it's peer pressure. They want to stop, and the access, it's almost too easy. I'm also a parent whose son is now in university. He's managed to stop vaping because it's not accessible in Amsterdam is where he is, because the EU has different regulations. But from grade 9 through 12, it only got worse. And the addiction, as a naive parent, I would admit, I think he had a Juul. When I first saw it, to me, it was part of his game console. The little bits were I just didn't know. And as education is getting more prevalent, as we're learning more, today I would have seen it, I might have grabbed it, I might have thrown it out, would have been the initial response. I don't think that would have helped. I just think that's what I would have done. And then now with students like Rania, conversations in the hallway, openly talking to me about the fact that they are vaping, that they don't like vaping. Hopefully we can help them. When I talk to my classes, as knowing I was coming here, I have been all week, it's just a lot of, we know it's bad, we don't care, is the honest response that I get. It is, I think you were telling me, Rania, I asked, well, how many kids vape? And you said, well, about 70%. So my response, I'm naive, is, well, 70% of kids must have tried vaping. And you're like, no, 90 to 100 have tried vaping. 70% are vaping regularly. Is that accurate? Yeah. And so that's, I'm at one school, but I know in the Burnaby School District where I work across the board, it's common. And I live in North Vancouver, and I know it's across the board, it's common. I have a foreign student going to Sea Cove. It's been in the news recently, I believe, but it's an issue there, and they want to lock doors, shut down bathrooms, do these types of things. That's completely ineffective, in my opinion. But But it's a knee-jerk reaction to what is a bad problem, and only education, and I would agree, the younger the better, because once my son was addicted, it was a whole different issue to curb that. And then we can talk later about what may have helped with that, but that's my position. And a fellow teacher of mine introduced me to Rania, who has a really good open way of discussing these things with us, and that will help students at our school if you keep talking with them about the difficulties of it. So.
Rania brings up a fantastic point. It's back in the smoking culture that we probably all remember when we were younger. It was the kids that were outside in the rain. They were the bad kids. You know, it's not the case anymore. It is, everybody's exposed to it. Everybody is going to be touched by this in some capacity. And that's the scary thought when we think about how are we going to control this? How are we going to get a handle on this? So that's a big deal. I had a teacher friend, or someone told me once recently, it was equally funny and equally sad, that the happiest moment for them is when they walk by a school bathroom and it actually smells like pee. And that's kind of a sad statement when you think about that. But I want to move on and introduce some of the other people that we have up here to help guide our discussion today. I'm going to start on the other end here. Dr. Chris Carlston is here. He's the head respirologist at UBC. He's the department head there. Dr. Carlston, do you want to tell us about your experience and why it's important for you to be on the stage with a microphone in your hand right now?
Sure. Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for coming out relatively early this morning. I really want to be a resource. I use this phrase, honest broker. Honest broker means that I don't have a particular agenda other than trying to educate and share and make people aware of what I'm learning myself from the perspective of public health and wanting to protect everyone from the potential harms of vaping. I am a lung doctor. I understand how the lungs work, and I'm a specialist in what happens when we inhale various things that aren't normally in our lungs. But I'm also here to listen because I have a lot to learn, and this story is evolving so quickly that I learn every day from people like you. And with all that, I'm happy to share my expertise and also listen and not rush to any judgment as we all try to get through this challenging scenario.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Sitting next to Dr. Carlston is Jennifer Callahan. She's our Director of Health Promotions and Tobacco Interventions at the Lung Association. She's also responsible for our Quit Now program, which is the smoking cessation program in our province. Jennifer, do you want to tell us around your experience and what it means for you to be here right now?
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here and see such an amazing panel because a lot of the work that we've done as of late, and as Chris mentioned, we work on the Quit Now program, which has been long established. It's the free government tobacco cessation program. And as of the last probably 3 months, the team has been working very hard to incorporate vaping services. So at this point, we have vaping only services for people. So that's for people who are looking to quit or reduce vaping. So it's really important that we're hearing from people like the panel today. We're hearing from people who are in the schools, seeing what's happening, you know, because we are specifically concerned with youth. So I'm really happy to be here today, and you know, moving forward, we want a lot more of this kind of engagement. We want to hear these voices, and it will ultimately mean that we have better programming.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. And sitting next to me, Dr. Mina Dower, who's the medical health officer at Vancouver Coastal. Very happy that you were able to join us for this as an authority on this topic. Could you please let all of us know what it means for you to be here?
Sure. Thanks very much, Chris, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's inspiring to see the young students here. What does it mean for me to be here? My story goes back a little ways. I've been with Vancouver Coastal for 10 years, and for 9 of those years, I've been supporting our tobacco program. About 9 years ago, our tobacco team, 2 of whom are here, came to me and said, "What do you think about e-cigarettes?" And I said, "Am I missing something? What's an e-cigarette?" And we've learned. The questions were, is it a useful tool? Should we be promoting it to people who use tobacco? Is it something to be concerned about? Is it unsafe? Are there harms? What about youth, etc.? And with our tobacco team and Dr. Kara, who's also here, we looked at the evidence, and we've been following the evidence grow and evolve over the last few years to really understand this issue and work with municipalities, work with provincial government, advocacy towards a federal government to try to bring in evidence-based measures to regulate this product. Because about 9 years ago, it was the Wild West. There were no regulations around the product. Anybody could make it using any ingredients and sell it to anybody. There were 11-year-olds purchasing this product because there were no laws. And I think we've come a long way. Regulation was a little bit light for a long time, but I think we're moving in the right direction. So what does it mean for me to be here? Well, it's actually super to see the level of conversation we're seeing now. We've been working hard to bring a lot of attention to this issue for the last few years, and I'm very pleased to see the public conversation we're having around this, both today and in the media.
Perfect. It's a good segue to the fact that I'm adamant that the only drivers of change are going to be the youth, the people who are experiencing this. So I'm going to ask Insiyah, what are you seeing in your schools? Are you seeing your peers do it? You're 12. Are you seeing older kids do it? Do you know how they're getting it? What's your experience in the school with this?
So in my school, I don't really see anyone doing it, but like most of my classmates and other peers I know, they sometimes think that, oh, this is more safer than smoking, so like maybe it's like okay to do it once in a while, but like I can still do it. So they think that vaping is a good thing for them, but it's not as bad as smoking.
So Rubina, as a parent, that must make you feel pretty good that your daughter in particular is being proactive about learning about this. Are you seeing this with the other parents, that they're equally concerned? Are they aware? What is their situation?
I've talked to a few parents, and that they also really don't understand much about the vaping. I think it's fairly new, and I think with middle school parents, they think they're still young, you know, and they're okay, they're still safe, they're not going to do this stuff. But as I was talking to the teacher outside and, you know, the other student, it's very discreet. Even if they start doing it, the parents are not going to know. They basically put it in their sleeves, you know, and it looks like a USB, and they'll just do it. So before parents know it, it's probably there and they don't know it. I think education has to start in the middle school, because once you start in grade 8, even that's too late. I also find parents are not doing enough to educate their children as to how harmful vaping can be. I don't see any information in the library which they can pick up and take home and show to their kids at grade 5 and 6. There's sections in the library where they have, you know, lots of stuff, but nothing on vaping. So videos would be good to get out there, a special section dedicated just for that, where parents can pick up, you know, and show stuff at home to the kids, because I think there's 3 people involved when it comes to bringing up a child. One is the parent, one is the educator, and one is the doctors, where the information should be coming from, passing it on to the teachers, who in return can educate the kids, and also parents picking up information from the library. So all 3 have to work together in planting the seed as early as possible. So I did bring it up as it should start in elementary, very basic, and then carry on to middle school, because by high school it's too late.
That's a very good point. It's a big push for education at a younger age, which brings me to Marcus and Rania. Marcus, particularly as a parent and a teacher, You have firsthand experience. What's it been like for you in the schools and trying to address this and educating them? What's your level of education in terms of what the topic has been, and how did you go about educating yourself, and how could have you been better supported in that?
I'm a physical education teacher. We're now physical and health education, so health education is a big piece of it. I would say we are catching up, and I'd say it's we're behind, and how we're going about it is still being a bit of a scare tactic, which hasn't been appropriate. And our little snippets, our youth workers in the school, we have sessions where we have PowerPoints and it's still showing an image of a vape and how it works and how it breaks down and turns into a vapor and goes into the lungs, and that will poison you. And that, as I'm seeing through my younger son who's 15 and the boys I talk to at school, I teach more male senior classes this year, isn't particularly effective. In the younger grades, I would agree, and I think the responses I've had, if the labels on the packaging were scary, would that work? The response is yes, that would work. So it's more imagery. And knowing I was coming here, a colleague of mine found, I think it's episode 2 of a program on Netflix called Broken. And I was watching that just to update myself, and my son came into the room who was watching a Netflix series of some kind in the other room, and he took it out of my hands and he went off to watch it, which caught me a bit off guard. I was really happy to have that happen. I didn't perceive that. So again, it's my parent hat, I think, will come back into my teaching hat, and just to expose kids to that type of information and to see the damage that it's being caused is the way to do it. And he hit a grade 10 boy, but the younger, the better. I absolutely agree. It's harder to reach a 16, 17-year-old rebellious teenager who just thinks I'm the old guy in the room that doesn't know what he's talking about. And actually, Rania and I were talking earlier. You look in their eyes and you know that no one's going to say, oh, absolutely, you're correct, Mr. Van, you know what you're talking about. But you can sort of read a student's eyes, and if you reach 3 of them out of maybe the 30 that you're talking to, you hope they then go off and in a peer pressure way, in a positive way, will, in that quiet group of kids vaping, probably middle of their English class around the corner or in the washroom, unfortunately, somebody speaks up and says something. So it's to pass it forward that way.
Yeah, peer pressure is such an important element to this, and again, this speaks to us needing the youth to drive this and be educated on this. Rania, this speaks to a lot about access, and how did it even end up in your hands in the first place? Do you want to share with us, how did you end up vaping? How did you get your first device? And what's kept you in it? Is it things like flavors? Is it accessibility? Is it cheap? Why are you continuing to do so even though you want to quit?
When I first got it was because my friends were like, oh, it's better and it's cheaper and gives you nicer head rushes. So actually my brother was smoking vape and he was like, oh, I'll buy it for you, it's better and it's healthier. And I was like, okay, let's go. He got me a vape and I told him what juice I want, nice like mint, like kind of like powerful, I would say. So it will be 50 Nick. So when I first got it, hit it, I got nice head rush. I was like, it actually helps. I wasn't thinking about smoking cigarettes anymore. I was happy, but I will hit it every like 2 minutes. And sometimes like my heart will beat so fast. I will hit it like in the morning and at night. It will give me the best like feeling. But it will be also like the worst because my heart will beat fast and sometimes I could not breathe. And I would just like lay in my bed and like get like dizzy. But then I'll like, sleep after and then wake up. Like it's a routine. Like if you don't have it, you feel so mad, so like empty. And like when you have it, it's like your best friend, I will say it. Like it's always in your mind, and it's so much cheaper because it doesn't finish until like 2 weeks, and it's only $20. And with cigarettes, you have to like count and, and you want to save it. But with like the juice doesn't finish like fast. And it's more convenient, as I said, because you don't have to go outside and you don't have to worry about getting caught like smelling. And I feel like still like parents think that cigarettes is worse than vape. And my dad, one time, he caught me smoking cigarettes with my older brother. And he didn't like it. Of course, I was so embarrassed. And when I got the vape, I don't know, he went into my room and I was smoking. He was like, "Oh, what is this?" I'm like, "It's vape. It's better. It doesn't smell and it's healthier." He was okay with it. I was like, wow, like, I was surprised. And whenever, like, I'm gonna be with my dad, I'll, like, hit it in front of him. And my dad is against smoking. He's, very Christian, I would say. We'll go to church every Sunday. So anyways, and I'll, like, hit it in front of him. He will not say anything. And it's just, like, I feel like people, like, because of the smell, and like people think it's worse, the cigarettes, but vape is actually worse for me because I always think about it and it gives me quicker head rush, and you just like indoors, you don't have to go outside, you're just bored, you just hit it. And like, yeah.
That's a very powerful story. So I thank you for sharing that. And it speaks to a classic case of addiction, really, is what's happened here. Dr. Carlston, she mentioned a couple things right off the top. This idea that she was told, and she believed it, and I suspect she's not the only one, that vaping is better than smoking cigarettes. What can you tell us sort of around that as a topic or that as a notion?
Right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Rania, for sharing that. The idea of vaping as better or worse than cigarettes is such a complicated area. Before I even touch on the substance of that, I just want to make really clear that we're very early in our understanding of that. And I think we all have to be incredibly careful about drawing any conclusions, and in particular, where the information is coming from. I think history shows very, very clearly that the source of information is critical, and I think it behooves all of us, and I ask everyone to understand where the information is coming from, even to the point of who paid for the studies, who paid for the advertising of getting that information out. These sound like issues that may not be something you want to dig into, but they're critical. And I'm, again, trying to help by giving information unbiased by any of those forces. So, and not to be too serious or dark about that, but everyone continue to probe for where the information is coming from. That being said, I think the trend, unfortunately, and I go to conferences several times a year and look at the absolute latest, the very hot off the presses information. The trend, unfortunately, is that the toxicity, and by toxicity I mean the damage to the lungs and to the heart and other parts of the body from vaping, is being shown to be just worse and worse than we thought, sadly. There is a very important discussion about smoking versus vaping and this concept of harm reduction, which we could get into, but just simply to answer the question of the harms of vaping, the trend in the evidence is that we're seeing more and more harmful effects, unfortunately. We don't know where this is going to go. I get new information every day. I'll go to conferences and there will be dozens of new studies, but the overall trend is towards harm, unfortunately, and that's very concerning to me.
Absolutely, and the concept of harm reduction is a key one, particularly when it comes around this concept of cessation. People are trying to quit smoking. So Jennifer, it's a topic that obviously is near and dear to your heart, squarely in your realm of work. What are you suggesting we tell people who are using vape as a method of quitting smoking?
Well, that's a tricky question, and if you'd asked that question 5 months ago, I probably would have had a very different answer. And a lot of this has been because of the news that's been coming out. A lot of it is from the United States, but we're seeing a fairly high number of cases. We're seeing cases of an illness that's associated with vaping. And with that illness, there's also been around 47 deaths or so. So there's something serious going on. So what we've had to do with our programming is we've taken a stance where it's a bit of a precautionary stance where we're saying the only way to be safe is to not vape. This is under investigation. We don't know what's going on. But we don't want to lose the potential for cessation as well. I think it's important to remember that for people who are using tobacco that are looking to quit, there are proven safe methods that have been established for years. And those are nicotine replacement therapy and medications, which are also free for us in BC if you have MSP coverage through a government program. So, they're accessible, safe, proven ways. So we're trying to steer people towards that. And I think that, there really needs to be more research done on whether these actually work for cessation. Because for people who are quitting tobacco, there is more, if you compare vaping versus a patch, right, there is more draw to using that as a cessation method, right? There's an identity that changes when someone becomes a non-smoker or is trying to quit. And that may or may not help them quit, right? Because there's an identity that exists still with vapors, right? There's not an identity for someone who's using a patch, right? There's no, solidarity amongst those people. So I think that at this point we have to be careful, and I think that we need to say that, in order to be safe, you just need to make your own choice around this, but we're recommending to use other proven safe methods until we know more.
This whole topic also speaks to this idea around here, the new regulations that are coming in British Columbia around the flavors and the restriction of flavors as opposed to a ban, which some of you may know happened in Nova Scotia this morning. So a part of that discussion that we had in British Columbia was around cessation. There was part of a discussion around the protection around a black market. And Dr. Dawar, I'm going to throw this one to you, especially hearing Rania's story around the appeal of the flavors as well. How do you feel about the restriction of flavors? And is that something, particularly after hearing Rania's story, is going to be effective in curbing some of the appeal?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And thank you, Rania, for your story. Very powerful and lots of important themes in there that we could touch on. In terms of flavors, youth vape for a number of reasons, because your friends do, because everybody is doing it around you, and it's a natural age for risk-taking and trying new things. And of course, flavors are appealing. They smell good, they taste good, and they have intriguing names. Certainly lots of evidence showing that flavors play a great role in increasing vaping among youth, and I'm very pleased that the provincial government has taken a strong stance on this. I think the wide availability of both high nicotine containing vaping products as well as the wide availability of flavored vaping products both have led to the increase in youth among youth, and of course promotion plays a role in there too. So pulling it back, pulling the access back a bit, perhaps permitting only some flavors rather than all flavors, permitting those flavors in locations that are age restricted, so we have decreased access for youth, will certainly go a long way towards helping youth who are not vaping at the moment, prevent them from starting vaping. I think the other side of the conversation that was touched on a little bit that is important is given that a large proportion of older youth are vaping, how do we help them? And that's a very nuanced conversation because the vaping products are very new. They've only been around for a decade and a half. There are no expert committee statements on this issue, but we use the principles of addictions, as I've learned from my colleagues, to address this issue as well. So so I think it's important to go down that path.
That's such an excellent point that I'm going to put Rania back on the spot a little bit here. As someone who does vape and has told me that you want to quit, what is that thing that's going to help you quit? What's going to push it over the edge? I think you know all the facts. You're very open around the fact that you know it's not good for you now. What's that little bit of help that you need that's going to push it over the edge for you?
To be honest, like, I went back to cigarettes, but
Why did you go back to cigarettes?
because I went back to cigarettes because I had like side effects. Side effects? Yeah, I don't know. And I'll like have bad. I cannot breathe most of the time. Sometimes I could not swallow or breathe when I was smoking vape, and
Did it help you stop?
yeah, it helped me stop. And it's very scary knowing that what can do to you. And I just told my friends, but people don't know. But in short amount of time, what vape can do to you, with cigarettes is like different. You can smoke for like 20 years, 30 years, and you will have in the future, like, it will be bad. Of course, you'll have cancer and all that. But with vape, it's such a short amount of time it happens. It's just very scary, and a lot of people know that. But it has to happen something to like a student or something so we can stop. We have to like see it. We have to see if, like, let's say someone goes to the hospital, we're gonna like be like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna stop it. But kids, we don't really care. I would say we'll be like, oh, it's bad, we know, but I don't know. Just yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you for sharing that, Insiyah. Someone who's in middle school who cares and wants to share this message with your peers, how is that going to be effective for you? Is it you talking to them about it? Are there things that you can be equipped with to tell them? What's going to be the most effective thing through your perspective to help them understand the dangers of this?
So in my perspective is that to get middle school students to know that vaping is bad for you, I suggest that vaping should be in the BC curriculum because they have to know that vaping is really a harmful thing to do, and it can affect you in a lot of different ways. Like you can get like brain damage and like heart lung failure and like heart problems, and like you can like lose self-control and social behavior, and you can like it can affect your learning and also in your school, and you can definitely carry it through high school, and then you can be more thinking that I will get addicted to it now, so then I'll keep moving on using it.
That's good. For both students, really, I mean, the use of social media marketing has been an important part around how vaping has really spread. And as you know, there's the prospects of regulations of what that advertising looks like. But one of the areas that is really difficult to tap into is the viral marketing that happens. Is this something that you're exposed to quite regularly? And are there ways that you think that you can combat that?
So what I was thinking is that the way to overcome the vaping epidemic is I think vaping shouldn't really have flavors, and because it's mostly attracting youth and middle school ages like me, and I think it's like we should remove the flavoring off of e-cigarettes because it's really making us feel like, oh, we should use it now because like there's like flavors like cotton candy and like mint and stuff like that.
Marcus, those questions for you. I'm curious generally around how many devices are you confiscating regularly? It's got to be a lot.
It's pretty consistent. As I said, it's pretty hard to walk into a washroom in a building and not come across a student vaping. So if you come across a student with a vape, policy is to take the vape. The student will have to go back to the office. The parent would have to come in. The parent have to meet in order to regain that vape. If it becomes a chronic situation where the same student then is called upon frequently because that's not having an effect, then unfortunately it would probably lead to a suspension for a few days, which the administrator applying that suspension knows that that's not a fix. It's just more school policy. It would be education, trying to help the kids realize the damage that they're causing to themselves. And as pointed to earlier, when they get to 16, 17, 18 years old, it's the social sort of, if I would say, psychology of it, and how do you scare these kids? They would say you need to ban it. They would tell me, if you want to stop me, you need to completely make it inaccessible. And accessibility is not an issue from what I understand. If we think that raising the age is the issue, that's not going to fix it. If potentially cost will slow it down because you make it more expensive. But sorry, I lost track a bit of the question. But flavors and such, if you remove that, I actually agree with a ban on that. I know you had said to me that that is an attractant to it, so I would agree with that. Make it more plain. But I think the true answer from what the kids would say to me, if they can get it, they will do it. So it's just continue to educate, continue to follow through, because taking them away is not helping.
A quick follow-up to that, and we'll probably be able to take one or two questions from the audience after that, but this idea around cost. Rania, you've mentioned you wanting to quitting and going back to cigarettes and the costs associated with that. You had also mentioned that the cost of getting the juice was quite cheap and it was available to you. So is there a level of which it could be so expensive to you that that would be the barrier to doing it altogether? Or is it still accessible enough that that's not much of a barrier to you?
Yeah, if it's more expensive, I don't think, because kids like work hard for their money and we want to buy stuff to last longer. But if it's more expensive, we're gonna kind of like, we're gonna kind of like back off. We're gonna be like, okay, we can buy cigarettes now. But if if it's more expensive, we wouldn't like spend our money for it like as much. But if we still have the chance, of course, we will do it because we like the effect and the taste and everything.
And Marcus, you had an experience as a parent in this situation in terms of the cost and also recognizing what Rania said around you work hard for your money, your son was working, but as a parent, you wanted to help him out a little bit still.
We spoke. I felt guilty as a parent, and I had spoken to Chris outside earlier. And again, a naive parent, I completely admit it that my son worked hard. He actually made pretty good money on the side. He was paying for his own cell phone, and every once in a while he would come to me, and I was slow to realize that you want a little extra. I needed a haircut. You're a parent, so of course you want to help your child out. So you give them their $20, $30 for the haircut. But meanwhile, they're $10 short on their cell phone bill that month. So you want to help your son out. But the vaping was still going on. I wasn't as aware initially, and I was certainly naive and unaware of the costs. And I think parents, or I believe many parents are guilty. We want to be naive because you don't want to see the negative in your children and things that are going on that aren't happening. But the parents are giving on one hand, thinking, well, I'm helping you with something positive, but you're not stopping that. And then that's, I believe, what you're alluding to, because cost is an issue, because essentially I was paying for his vape. I just didn't know that I was paying for his vape, because if I'm paying for part of the cell phone and I'm paying for the haircut and you're vaping regularly, even the vaping's expensive, I'm just a naive parent that isn't seeing the bigger picture. And I think I fell into that trap. I became more aware over time. He also became older, so it was easier to put all those responsibilities. I'm taking care of, 1, 2, and 3, and you're taking care of 4, 5, and 6. And then as he got older, I think cost became an issue because he was reliant upon himself for that, and he had to budget. So that did work. But younger children who aren't relying on their own money for most things, it's pocket money or it's allowance or it's here and there. It's hard to know where exactly the money is going, and we think we know. I would say most of us don't always know what's happening, or I would say we don't. I think I did. I was not aware of exactly where it was going. I had a thought. I don't want to lose it back to the last one. I mentioned this broken, and you've been talking a lot about smoking and going back to smoking. I watched that episode too just the other day, and at the end of it, in the British system, there's different systems. It's a little off topic, but at the end of it, I was thinking, how are you going to teach your students? How are you going to educate your students? That was a piece I would like to bring back to the schools. And I was 40 minutes in, and this is great, and this is sending all the right messages. And then they go international, and of course they bring on the British speakers, and it's a different system. And smoking is such a dramatic problem in Britain, as alluded to in this episode, that they are still heavily promoting vaping in cessation and I thought that would hugely turn students in the wrong direction, because the way the psychology, as I read it, of the typical students that I'm working with that are vaping, that would come across, it's not meant to, and as an adult and you see it, it's not, but it would come across as a promotion. Oh, vaping's good. See, that's exactly what they're telling me. That's how they would hear that message.
Mina, did you just want to say that?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. The stories are very powerful, and I've been having a number of thoughts listening to them. But I think I really want to go back to Rania, your story. And it really symbolizes for me how we as a society have failed our youth. E-cigarettes really came forward. They were created by a pharmacist as a tool to help people quit smoking. Tobacco use is terrible. It leads to premature death in 1 in 2 users, so it's pretty harmful. Safe is over here. Something that kills 1 in 2 users is over here. And there's a whole landscape of risk in between, and vaping falls in between there. What you've shared with us, of course, is how nicotine in the vapes makes you feel good in the short term, makes you feel really high and concentrated. But then as those nicotine levels fall, you need another hit to keep it going. And that's really the power of nicotine. It's a highly addictive substance. It has a huge effect on the brain. The second piece that you shared is because you were vaping so regularly, in fact, you were getting into respiratory irritation. You were having trouble with your breathing, etc. So the chemicals in the vapes were affecting your lungs, and that's a short-term effect. Now, where was I going with the story? I guess I just wanted to bring us back to that, and in terms of the risks, the third piece that we actually haven't talked about is the fact that because of the respiratory effects, you've started smoking again. And your story, again, is not alone. And it's because nicotine dependence on the brain means people need to go and find other sources of nicotine, something that's less irritating for the lungs in the short time, maybe something that's cheaper as well. And so you're not alone. Many youth are starting to smoke. So what we have found is there are more studies emerging that youth who vape are at greater risk of going on to use tobacco, which again leads me back to this end of the spectrum of risk, which is where we don't want youth going. And in fact, in the last 30 years in Canada, tobacco rates among youth have been declining steadily, except in the last year, they've gone up again. And we think there's a very close association between an increase in vaping, which has led to the increase in tobacco use. So again, a powerful story. Thank you for bringing that to us. But again, letting you know you're not alone. This is important, and that's why we want to address this issue.
Absolutely. Dr. Carlson.
Yeah, I'll make sure I'm relatively brief to leave the time that you want for questions, but I do feel really strongly to just make 2 points that, again, I think for education purposes to share. One is I think we have to be super careful to understand that there are two issues here. They're related, but it's important to think of them, I think, separately to just get our thoughts clear. One is this idea of harm reduction, super complicated, very unclear as to the extent that vaping really is effectively a harm reduction technique. It may or may not be. It probably depends on the circumstances. Stay tuned for that. Very complicated. On the other hand, people that don't smoke, there's zero benefit to vaping, none whatsoever, nada. There's nothing good about vaping. It can only hurt your lungs. There's absolutely zero evidence that it does anything good for your body. So we can't confound these issues. If we're in Marcus's comment struck me about the video, if the whole risk benefit of vaping versus tobacco starts to bleed into, if you will, or cross into the debate about those that don't smoke, that's a big problem. Because any possible benefits of vaping for harm reduction has absolutely nothing to do with those that don't smoke. For those people, there's only risk, and that is absolutely uncontroversial. There's no controversy about the fact that for those that don't smoke, it's risk only. The exact amount of risk, controversial, yes. That it's risk only for those that don't smoke is not controversial whatsoever. That's point number one. The other point is the flavorings. Very important. Again, more and more evidence of toxicity. But don't be fooled that if you get rid of flavorings, that nicotine alone is safe, because it's not. And that's also not controversial. There is no controversy about the fact that nicotine alone is dangerous on many levels, which I'd be happy to explain at any time. But those are the 2 points that I really need to make clearly to this audience.
Those are very strong and very clear statements. Thank you for that, Dr. Carlson. We probably have time for one question, if there is a question. I see one back there. I think it might be Suzanne. Absolutely. That is in the new legislation. Dr. Dower was at that presentation. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we recommended to the provincial government and have to the federal government that there be an upper threshold to the amount of nicotine in e-juice, provincial government. I know we weren't alone in recommending. I'm sitting at BC Lung and other partners who made the same recommendation. And so the provincial government will be putting an upper cap on nicotine, similar to the European Union, which is amazing. I believe other provinces are looking at the same as well. So it's about time, and I really want Health Canada to step in so that every province doesn't have to do this one at a time.
One more question, Wes.
Just a quick one. Firstly, thank you to all the panelists, and in particular our students who are here today. It's never easy speaking in public, and I just commend you for coming forward. I really appreciate what you had to say. My question is, and you've done great, fantastic. My question is, where are you or your peers buying these products? Because we're concerned about how students are getting their hands on them, and we're trying to regulate and restrict all access to that. But yet at the same time, we do understand that sometimes young people are buying these products online and having them shipped via methods that we have less regulatory power sometimes, or more complex types of regulatory power. So I'm curious to know, is it corner stores, convenience stores? Are people bootlegging and going into tobacco shops and getting them? Are they being bought online? Like, how are you getting them?
From vape shops. So we have like older friends that they can get it for us, or siblings that they do it, and sometimes like unknown people, like strangers, and like they go to the vape shop and we just ask them, yo, can you buy me juice, and they buy it, because I feel like, because they've been what we've going through like, we want to buy, can you please buy? They know the feeling. So I think it affects them, to be nice to us. But, sometimes they say, oh, I'll do it, but, that's it. But yeah, from vape shops.
We'll do one more.
This question is for Chris. I'm with Fraser Health, and I've been involved in developing quite a number of resources related to vape. And one of the things that we look at is exactly how nicotine is framed up, because we want to be cautious in terms of making sure that people know NRT is okay. NRT contains nicotine, it's okay. But nicotine in these other products, these populations, is not okay. So it's just
Right.
going back to your comment
Right.
on the dangers.
Right. I should have been more clear. I'm sorry. Sometimes I say things without that level of clarity, which can confuse people. So I really appreciate it. I was referring to inhaled nicotine. As Jennifer was saying, patches and other forms of nicotine replacement are very safe as long as you use them as prescribed and as directed. The evidence of inhaled nicotine's harm to the lungs is what I was referring to. And I also want to say that it just happens to be that yesterday I heard a presentation by a very credible colleague of mine at the university, and she was demonstrating that when nicotine replacement, including even through Quit Now, so very real life to our system here, is supported in the way that we think it should, with full-blown support of all of the education, et cetera, that is needed to make it work, the quit rates are actually phenomenal. Really, really good. Part of the problem historically is it's a system that works, but it really only works with all of the support that's needed for that individual to get through the difficult challenge of quitting smoking. So I think a big part of this is that we need to go back to basics and apply what we know about proven nicotine replacement and do it right. And I think if we were to do that, we'd see really, really impressive rates of quitting that we'd all be thrilled by.
We'll conclude the formal portion right now. I want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists. I want to say that our goal today was to inform, to educate, to teach everyone things that were grounded in science. And I think we've done that. I think we also have to recognize that this is only the beginning. This is part of a longer process. I appreciate so much having the student voice here, and we will be calling on you in the future to continue to guide our discussions as we hope to make some positive changes. I want to thank everybody here for taking the time today on a Friday morning to be here. And of course, all the people, I think we're live on Facebook, so we're going to say goodbye to those people right now. I won't burden our panel too much more, but if there are a few more questions, we're happy to stay and answer a few more questions. Otherwise, thank you and have a good rest of your Friday. Are there other questions? Oh, we got a lot of questions. Why don't we start down here?